Buckingham Palace has announced that Prince Andrew is returning his royal and military titles to the Queen.
Prince Andrew, once a senior member of the British royal family, has faced numerous scandals over the years. But beyond the headlines, there's an untold story, one that comes from someone who saw it all firsthand. His former maid, who worked for him after his divorce from Sarah Ferguson, has stepped forward with shocking claims about his behavior behind palace doors. From outrageous demands to disturbing tantrums, her revelations paint a troubling picture of the Duke of York. So what was Prince Andrew really like when the cameras weren't rolling? First things first, Prince Andrew was born into a life of immense privilege. He came into the world on February 19, 1960 in Buckingham Palace as the third child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. At that time, his birth was a pretty big deal. You see, Queen Elizabeth had already been on the throne for several years, and Andrew was the first child born to a sitting monarch in over 100 years. He had two older siblings, Charles and Anne, and a younger brother, Edward, came along a few years later. Growing up as a royal in those days meant strict schooling and a bit of isolation from the regular world. Andrew attended a private preparatory school called Heatherdown, then went off to Gordonstown, a Scottish boarding school known for being tough and demanding. Both his father, Prince Philip, and his older brother Charles went to the same school, so it was almost a family tradition. During his time there, Andrew was no stranger to breaking a few rules. Once, in a TV interview, he even shared a cheeky story about being caught in the girls' section of the school, a tale that would stick with him for a long time. From a young age, Andrew always had a fascination with flying, especially helicopters. This passion for aviation led him to join the Royal Navy in 1979, right after finishing school. He trained as a helicopter pilot and received his wings in 1981. One of the proudest moments of his early career was when his father, Prince Philip, awarded him a prize for being the best pilot in his class. Andrew's time in the Navy wasn't just about showing off his flying skills, though. It turned serious quickly when he was called to serve during the Falklands War in 1982. The Falklands War was a brief but intense conflict between Britain and Argentina over a set of islands in the South Atlantic. Andrew, as part of the crew aboard the Royal Navy ship HMS Invincible, took part in dangerous missions, flying helicopters for anti-submarine warfare and search and rescue operations. His return from the war was seen as heroic, and there were even moments when people feared he might become a target during the conflict. His mother, Queen Elizabeth, and his father, Prince Philip, greeted him with relief when he returned safely from the battlefield. Fast forward to the early 80s, when Andrew's personal life took an interesting turn. He crossed paths with Sarah Ferguson, better known as Fergie. They'd known each other since childhood, but it wasn't until Princess Diana played matchmaker in 1985 that things sparked between them. Diana, who was great friends with Fergie, helped arrange a meeting at the Royal Ascot races, and the rest is history. Andrew and Fergie quickly became an item, and by the next year, in 1986, they were married in a grand royal wedding. The couple was given the titles Duke and Duchess of York as a wedding gift from the Queen. Their marriage was filled with love and affection, at least in the beginning. Fergie even once said in an interview, "We married for total love." The couple had two daughters, Princess Beatrice, born in 1988, and Princess Eugenie, born in 1990. But despite their strong connection, the pressures of Andrew's naval duties and royal life started to take a toll on the relationship. Andrew was often away for long stretches, and by 1992, after 6 years of marriage, the couple decided to separate. Their divorce became official in 1996, though both insisted it was not due to a lack of love, but more so because Fergie wanted to live a life beyond the constraints of being a royal. Even after the divorce, they remained close friends and continued living under the same roof at the Royal Lodge in Windsor, co-parenting their daughters in what Fergie has described as an extraordinary example of a unified family. But if Andrew's personal life was complicated, things were about to get a whole lot messier for him professionally. His Navy career ended in 2001 after 22 years of service, and soon after he took up a number of royal duties. For years he carried out engagements on behalf of the Queen and held prestigious positions in several organizations, especially charities focused on education and technology. He was even a special trade envoy for the United Kingdom for a period. However, the spotlight on Andrew began to shift in a darker direction in the early 2010s. Back in March 2011, the media began reporting more and more on the prince's friendship with Epstein. At that point, Epstein had already been convicted of serious crimes involving underage girls, and naturally, people started asking questions. How could someone in Prince Andrew's position, a senior member of the British royal family, have such a connection? And why hadn't he distanced himself sooner? It wasn't just the public asking these questions. There were calls for Andrew to step down from his role as a UK trade envoy because of the steady stream of criticism that kept rolling in. His judgment was being seriously questioned, and things got even worse when his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, revealed that Andrew had arranged for Epstein to pay off some of her debts. It wasn't a huge amount of money, about £15,000, but the fact that Epstein was involved at all didn't sit well with anyone. The turning point came in December 2010. Photographs of Prince Andrew walking with Epstein in Central Park made headlines. This wasn't just a casual visit. Epstein had already been released from prison after serving time for his crimes. So why was Andrew still associating with him? The backlash was swift, and by July 2011, Andrew's role as a trade envoy was officially terminated. He claimed to have cut ties with Epstein after that, but the damage to his reputation was already done. Things didn't quiet down, though. In 2014, a bombshell dropped when Virginia Giuffre, formerly known as Virginia Roberts, came forward in a court filing, making explosive accusations. She claimed that Prince Andrew had engaged in sexual activities with her when she was just 17. These weren't isolated incidents either. She said it happened 3 times, once in London, once in New York, and another time on Epstein's private island, Little St. James. It's hard to ignore the details. Giuffre stated that Epstein had paid her $15,000 after one of these encounters in London. If you've seen the photograph, you probably remember it well. It shows Prince Andrew with his arm around a young Virginia Giuffre, and in the background Ghislaine Maxwell is standing there smiling. Maxwell, who was Epstein's close associate, played a key role in the scandal as well. Andrew has consistently claimed that he has no recollection of ever meeting Giuffre, despite that widely circulated photo. He and his team even suggested that the photo might be doctored, though investigations into whether the picture was real or fake have never come to a solid conclusion. For Giuffre, the situation was terrifying. She said she didn't feel like she had a choice in any of it, and that Epstein's powerful connections made her fear for her life. She felt she couldn't refuse, claiming that Epstein could have her killed or abducted if she ever stepped out of line. The seriousness of these accusations can't be understated, and though Andrew repeatedly denied everything, his name was now cemented in one of the biggest scandals to ever hit the British royal family. But Giuffre wasn't the only person to make claims against Prince Andrew. Another woman, Johanna Sjoberg, came forward in 2019, saying that Andrew had inappropriately touched her at Epstein's mansion. She described an incident where they were posing for a photo and Andrew put his hand on her breast. The growing number of accusations surrounding his behavior started to pile up, and it painted a troubling picture of his associations with Epstein's inner circle. It didn't help that more stories kept surfacing. In 2013, an email exchange was published where someone claimed they'd seen Andy getting a foot massage from 2 Russian women at Epstein's residence in New York. The Andy in question, well, the email said it was none other than Prince Andrew. By now, people were demanding answers, and the prince's attempts to explain things weren't doing him any favors. Then came the infamous BBC Newsnight interview in November 2019. You might have heard about it. It became one of the most talked about interviews in recent history. Prince Andrew sat down with journalist Emily Maitlis to, in his words, set the record straight. But instead of clearing things up, It felt like he dug himself into an even deeper hole. In the interview, Andrew admitted to meeting Epstein through Ghislaine Maxwell, a mutual friend, back in 1999. Interestingly, this contradicted his own private secretary's statement from 2011, which said they met much earlier, in the early 1990s. Despite Epstein's criminal record, Andrew insisted that he didn't regret the friendship because it opened up useful opportunities for him. He also tried to give an alibi for one of the nights Giuffre claimed they were together in London, saying he couldn't have been with her because he had been at a pizza restaurant in Woking with his daughter Beatrice. His defense didn't stop there. Andrew also brought up a bizarre medical explanation, claiming he couldn't have been sweating profusely while dancing with Giuffre, as she had described, because he had temporarily lost the ability to sweat after suffering an adrenaline overdose during the Falklands War. This strange detail left a lot of people puzzled, to say the least. Throughout the interview, Andrew maintained that he had no memory of meeting Giuffre and questioned whether the photo of them together was even real. He went so far as to suggest that the clothes he was wearing in the photo didn't seem right. Those were his traveling clothes, not the kind he would have worn in London. And though he admitted to staying at Epstein's mansion for a few days in 2010, after Epstein had been convicted, he said it was just convenient at the time, and that he now deeply regrets the decision. After the interview aired, it didn't take long for public opinion to turn against him. People were shocked by his lack of remorse and his inability to fully distance himself from Epstein. The media dubbed it a car crash of an interview, and even within the royal family there were serious repercussions. Shortly after the interview, Andrew stepped down from his public duties for the foreseeable future. He wasn't just losing favor with the public, his professional ties were collapsing too. The University of Huddersfield cut ties with him, and companies like KPMG and Standard Chartered ended their sponsorships of his entrepreneurial initiative, Pitch at Palace. It wasn't just his reputation on the line. Andrew also faced potential legal trouble. In 2020, U.S. Attorney Geoffrey Berman said that Andrew had provided zero cooperation with the FBI in their ongoing investigation into Epstein, despite Andrew publicly saying he would help with any legal inquiries. It became clear that the scandal wasn't going away anytime soon. Fast forward to 2022, and Prince Andrew finally settled a civil case brought by Giuffre for an undisclosed amount of money. Though he didn't admit to any wrongdoing, this settlement was seen as a way to avoid a lengthy and very public trial. But by then, his royal career was effectively over. He had permanently stepped down from all his public roles, and the once respected Duke of York had become a controversial and isolated figure. There are plenty of stories out there about Prince Andrew's questionable behavior, but now his former maid is adding her experiences to that growing list. Charlotte Briggs, who worked for the Duke of York after his divorce from Sarah Ferguson, has come forward with some truly shocking details. Charlotte started working for Prince Andrew when she was just 21 years old, taking on what she described as the job nobody wanted. After Andrew's marriage to Fergie ended in 1996, his behavior seemed to spiral into an odd combination of entitlement and sheer arrogance. Briggs, like many others who worked closely with him, witnessed this firsthand. What she had to say is eye-opening, to say the least. In an interview with The Sun, Charlotte recalled an incident that still haunts her to this day. She had been tasked with closing the heavy floor-to-ceiling curtains in Prince Andrew's room, something that wasn't exactly easy due to their size and weight. After finishing the task, she was walking down the corridor, thinking her job was done, when Andrew suddenly stormed out of his office and started screaming at her. "Can't you do anything right?" he yelled, furious that a small gap had been left where the curtains met. She was reduced to tears by his outburst, but this wasn't an isolated incident. According to Briggs, Andrew's attitude was consistently condescending and demanding. He acted like he was above everyone, and there was a sense that the people around him were there solely to serve his every whim. She described him as lazy, sharing that he would often call down from his office, demanding that someone come up and close the curtains or perform other menial tasks that he was more than capable of doing himself. It's easy to see how this kind of behavior could wear someone down, and Charlotte admits that she often tried to avoid him while she was on duty. But that's not all she had to deal with. Andrew had some very specific, almost obsessive habits that he expected his staff to follow to the letter. One of the strangest revelations was about his stuffed animal collection. Yes, you heard that right, stuffed animals. According to Briggs, Andrew had an entire collection of teddy bears and other stuffed toys that were arranged in a meticulous order. These bears were no laughing matter. In fact, there were detailed instructions that had to be followed regarding the arrangement of his 72 stuffed animals. The bears were lined up in size order, with the biggest ones in the back and the smallest in the front. Two of his favorite bears were placed on little thrones beside his bed. Yes, actual thrones. And heaven forbid if they were out of place. Briggs and other staff members had to follow a laminated instruction sheet that told them exactly how to arrange the bears throughout the day, with specific directions on where to move them at night when Andrew went to bed. His pillows, adorned with the royal crest, also had to be perfectly placed in the center of the bed, and his night clothes were laid out just so. Any deviation from this routine could result in one of his infamous tantrums. According to Briggs, it wasn't uncommon for him to throw a fit if his toys weren't arranged to his liking. Charlotte wasn't the only staff member to experience this kind of treatment from the Duke. Other former palace workers have come forward with their own stories, adding to the growing narrative of Prince Andrew's strange and often rude behavior. One staff member recounted an incident in which Andrew placed his toiletry bag in his brother Prince Charles's bathroom. When the staff tried to tell him that he had put his things in the wrong bathroom, he refused to move them. It wasn't until Queen Elizabeth herself intervened that Andrew finally moved his belongings. This kind of entitlement was par for the course when it came to Andrew, and his behavior left many of the staff shaking their heads in disbelief. What's striking about Charlotte's story is the stark contrast she drew between Andrew and the other royals she worked with. She said that despite his lofty status, Andrew was the only one who acted entitled. In fact, she shared that her interactions with Prince Charles and Prince Edward were nothing but respectful, and even Prince Philip, who was known for his gruff personality, came across as a gentleman. For her, the difference between someone like Nelson Mandela, whom she once had the privilege of meeting, and Prince Andrew was stark. She described Mandela as someone who appreciated everything he had and understood the gravity of his role in the world, whereas Andrew seemed to take his position for granted and treated those around him with little respect. As for the sexual assault allegations Andrew faces, Charlotte didn't hold back her feelings. While she stopped short of directly addressing those claims, she expressed deep sympathy for the Queen. "It's the Queen I feel sorry for," she said. "It must be hard for her." And she's not wrong. Andrew's actions over the years have cast a long shadow over the royal family, putting the Queen in a difficult position as she tried to navigate the fallout from his behavior. But where does all of this leave Prince Andrew today? In January 2024, newly unsealed court documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein once again put Andrew's name in the spotlight. Anti-monarchy groups in the UK, like Republic, have called for an investigation into Andrew's involvement with Epstein, but as of now, the Metropolitan Police have said there are no plans to open a case. We are aware of the release of court documents in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. As with any matter, should new and relevant information be brought to our attention, we will assess it. No investigation has been launched, they stated in early 2024. Despite growing public pressure, stripping Andrew of his Duke of York title is no simple task. According to legal experts, Parliament has the power to remove royal titles, but it's a complicated process. Because Andrew has never been formally charged or convicted of any crime, the UK government still considers him legally innocent, making it unlikely that his title will be taken away anytime soon. For now, Prince Andrew remains largely out of sight, attending only family gatherings and staying away from the public eye. His future within the royal family is uncertain, but it's clear that the scandal surrounding him has left a lasting mark on both his reputation and the monarchy itself. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below and stay tuned for more similar videos.